Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning. Happy New Year. We're so glad you're joining us here online for worship. In this new year of 2023, may God be our vision. Would you sing with me?
Good morning, Village Green Community Church. My name is Richard. I'm one of the strategic communication volunteers here at the church. I'm really glad to be able to meet you today online, as everything today is online. January 1st, 2023. Happy New Year. From my family to yours, I want to wish you all the best health and prosperity. The church is also going to be a very busy place throughout the next year, and I want to remind you of a few things that are ongoing. We are continuing to make collections towards our roof project. These donations, please mark them as roof donations, whether you donate online or whether you're here in the building starting next week, because of course we're all online today. But when you bring your donations in, please make sure that they are marked for the roof project. Next Sunday is going to be a special Sunday, as we're going to be welcoming Sam and Henny. They are missionaries through the Persian ministry. They're going to be giving an update on what's been going on with them over the last while. Also, Sam is going to be bringing us the message on that Sunday. That Sunday is also a special day for the youth, as they're going to be back to Sunday in church. So Sunday, January 8th, the youth will be able to meet during the service and be able to get together that way. Also, the very next day, Monday the 9th, youth will be kicking off their evening programs again, so make sure you're ready for that. New series by John is going to be coming out on January 15th, so in a couple weeks from now, and it's going to be called God Is. And to know God is to know his true attributes and character. What is God really like? And why is understanding him help us in our personal relationship with him? I hope you join us Sunday, January 15th, as John brings us that new series called God Is. I'm going to turn things back over to Julianne. And again, I wish you a very happy 2023.
I sincerely hope you've had a lovely Christmas season. And yes, even though Christmas Day is behind us, before the season is completely over, I thought we'd sing one more Christmas carol. So would you join me in singing this now? God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born upon this day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
Well, good morning and Happy New Year. Nice to have you here on this very first day of a brand new year, January 1st, 2023. I'm so glad you've joined us and nice to have you here. I'm John Karkadakis, for those of you that don't know me, but I'm here. Welcome to the service. And, I got to tell you that as we've just come through the Christmas season, I pray that, the season for you and your family was a real blessed time, that you were able to enjoy the season, the celebration of Jesus and all that brings into our lives, and the celebration of the incarnation. But, if you're anything like me, as you've gone through this season and as the new year starts, you kind of reflect a little bit on the past year. And maybe you're in that, that same sort of situation where you're reflecting on the last year. But I got to tell you, I'm not just reflecting on the last year. I personally am reflecting on the last 2 to 3 years, because they all seem to be clumped together this season that we have been through. I don't know very many seasons where we have seen such an outpouring of conflict, of hurt, of pain, of all kinds of divisions and things that have sort of upended the last 2 to 3 years. So if you're looking forward to kind of like a hopeful start to 2023, then I'm with you 100%. If we close the page on 2022 and enter into 2023, I hope that you're in the same place as I am, that we're looking forward to a year where we continue to distance ourselves from, I've joked about it being a dumpster fire for the last 2 to 3 years, but let's hope that we can learn something from the last 2 to 3 years and take it with us as God is teaching us about what it means to be trusting in Him during very difficult times, or times that have been challenging at the very least. I don't think there's anybody listening to this that hasn't been challenged in some way or another this last 2-3 years. So as we start this new year on January 1st, here we are. I prayed long and hard and thought long and hard about what is it that I want to bring as we start this new year, and as we collectively look as a community, as collectively we look as a church, as a people. What is it that we want to bring to you this morning and kind of challenge you on? And I'm calling this the year of something. You're going to hear that in a minute. And, I'm going to put some things forward, maybe for you to think about, things to pray about, things that you can, effectively put into your life in order to equip yourself to trust God deeper in 2023, and just watch the way He can work in our lives when we allow Him to do that. Not just individually. I'm gonna talk corporately too. I'm gonna talk as a community about what kinds of things I would love to see us moving towards. I mean, maybe it's a bit of a visioning thing for the church and for you individually. So I'm going to talk about those two components as we start this year. And as I was praying about this, there was a particular passage that sort of came out of my prayer time. And I have to admit, it sort of started echoing. We did a series called Messy Life back in the fall, started in the fall, ended mid-November. And I have to admit that this passage kept coming up again and again. And I just felt the Lord directed me to this particular passage. So this is the one we're going to focus in this morning. So if you want to just listen along as I read at least the first verse that we're going to look at. And the challenge to you as we start this brand new year is coming from Romans 12, verses 1 to 2. Now, some of you may be very familiar with this passage. And I know I am, and I know it's spoken to me many, many times. And I think as we start this new year, it's a beautiful challenge for us to dive into, and a challenge to sort of, put at the forefront of this year as we begin a brand new one. Romans 12:1 reads this from the Apostle Paul. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and a holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Now, I want to just pause on this verse because it's the second verse we're going to really dive into. But this particular verse is so challenging, and it says in this particular version in the NLT, it says because of all that God has done for you. Now, in older translations, that phrase comes across as in view of God's mercy. Now that's a beautiful statement, and if you're a believer here this morning, I want to remind you of something very important that Paul is stating very clearly here. In view of God's mercy, okay? Now, in other faiths in ancient Near East at this time, and even further into the generations, that people would go and they would sacrifice in order to gain mercy from the gods. And that was part of the sacrificial system. I need mercy, so I'm going to make this sacrifice in order to get that mercy. But here Paul reminds us that we already have attained mercy, that God has done this for us, and it's the basis or the reasons in which we willingly give up our bodies as living and holy sacrifices. And in talking about our bodies, Paul here is, metaphorically speaking about everything about us, our mind, our heart, our soul, like whatever you think of, whether we're a two-component being, a three-component being, whatever it is. Paul is saying everything that you are, surrender it in worship to the Lord because of the mercy that he has extended to you. That's what a statement of God's love and care and character for us as we begin this brand new year. In fact, Paul is saying that this kind of surrender, this whole person surrender, is the essence of true worship. That this becomes an expression of the mercy that we recognize that we have received in our lives. And it's the overwhelming response when we come to terms with what God has done for us willingly. And as I've said, we've come through the Christmas season. What better time to reflect again on the incredible gift of Jesus Christ in our lives. So Paul is framing this beautiful picture of worship in light of what God has done for us. And that's a beautiful response to the mercy that has been given to us. So here's the second verse. As Paul has kind of framed this is what he goes on to say. And this is where we're going to kind of dial in and do a deeper dive in this particular verse. Verse number 2. Paul writes, don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Now, this second verse kind of illustrates how it is that we go about worshiping God as living and holy sacrifices. And because of this particular verse where it says don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, that statement alone I think is a statement that we can proclaim for ourselves as we begin this new world, this new year, not this new world, this new year. And I think it's important because, I'm calling this the year of resistance. This is because of this particular passage. I'm calling this the year of resistance. So that's my invitation to you. Can you make this the year of resistance? Now, some of you are going to hear that and you're going to say, oh, did, John suddenly get militant? This John suddenly calling us to be anti this, be a judgmental church, be a church that's going to go against everything that the world is forcing us or telling us that we should be doing, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm going to clarify really clearly what I mean by making this the year of resistance. What I mean, here's the definition of resistance. The definition of resistance, and this is so important, is that in my life or in the life of our community, we want to resist anything that pulls us away from becoming more like Jesus. Let me say that again. This is what I mean by resistance, to make this the year of resistance. That we want to resist anything, be it individually or corporately, that pulls us away from becoming more like Jesus. And as I said, we did this series called Messy Life back in the fall into November, and we talked about all these forces, all these things that happen in our lives that create messiness in our lives. But in all of it, the conclusion is we can trust God in the midst of the mess, that we can trust Jesus to be there and to carry us through the difficulties and not to leave us or forsake us. That's the powerful message that we have as believers in Jesus Christ. And Paul talks about transforming our minds and becoming new people. And the transformation of our minds comes in a number of ways. And if you're part of this church, I pray that you see this as part of what we do on a regular basis as a church. But God transforms our thinking in a number of ways, through His Word, God's Word. Every week, we're pouring into the Scriptures and communicating the Scriptures to people. And I pray that it's a blessing for you as we do so. Prayer is big. I love the fact that we have such a powerful prayer ministry in this church, and so many people who are committed to prayer. It's not just an elder thing, it's a community thing that we have so many people who are praying. That's so wonderful. The Holy Spirit, do we surrender ourselves to the leading of the Spirit in our lives? That's another way that we transform our thinking. Faithfully teaching of the Word. I pray that you are blessed, that each and every week, whoever's on the platform here at Village Green, that you are being blessed because it's a faithful teaching of the Word of God. Okay? And it's applicable, and it allows you to take the truth of God's Word and apply it to your life in a way that helps you to change your thinking and helps you to understand God's will for your life in a very real and tangible way. And of course, lastly, the community. The community is so, very important. And when community works well, and this is, where I'm going to lean into, when community works well, it's so incredibly powerful. And it's such a testament to the church that Christ intended and wants and died for. And we know we can get very critical about the church. We can get, very disheartened by, things that happen in the church. And I know that. As a pastor, believe me, I know the difficulties that sometimes being part of community can bring. And yet, when the church works, oh my goodness, there's nothing like it. So let's be a church that works, okay, as best as we can. So those are things on an individual basis that shape us and shape us, as community as well. So as I talked about, these things that we talk about as an individual, apply very much on a community-wide basis. Now, I want, as a pastor here at Village Green, it is a responsibility of mine to help people grow individually in their walk with Jesus Christ, or invite people to trust Jesus Christ. And that's one aspect of what I see my responsibilities being here. But secondly is the responsibilities to the greater community as a whole, as a bride of Christ, as a community of believers, as a church, ecclesia, okay? That there are certain things that, I'm responsible for or feel a responsibility towards. So as I kind of close out this message, I want to give us a few things that I think as values that we need to kind of push towards. If this truly is going to be a year of resistance, that we resist anything that pulls us away from becoming more like Jesus. There's kind of 4 things that I am praying for as a community. And you can adopt these individually, but I'm going to speak about the larger picture of the church. And hopefully these are 4 things, as I explain them, that they become part of your prayer life, they become part of the way you think, that they become part of what it means to be in this community, and help you to kind of model this year as a year of resistance that helps you resist anything that pulls you away from becoming more like Jesus. Now here's the first. These are really quick, and I'm going to give you the first of 4. And the first one is, I want us to be a community of certainty, a community of confidence. Now, I'm not talking about being arrogant. I'm not talking about being judgmental. I'm not talking about we know what we're doing. We're the only ones that know what we're doing. There's no sense of arrogance, ego, or anything like this. So what I'm talking about being a community of certainty is that we are confident in the Word of God, that we are confident in the faithfulness of God, that we are confident in prayer, that we are confident that the gospel is sufficient for all and worthy of proclamation, that the gospel has the power to change lives. If there's one thing we want to be certain of, one thing that we want to be confident in, is the power of the Word of God and the power of the gospel to change and transform lives. We might be arguing about all kinds of other things, or we might be doubtful about all kinds of other things, or wrestling through other biblical issues and stuff like that. But if there's one thing I want us to be confident about as a church, is the gospel of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. So when we talk about, I pray that we become a church of confidence, a church of certainty. This is what I'm talking about, the certainty in the gospel to transform lives and to make a difference in our world. All right. Secondly, I want us to be a community of engagement, a community that serves one another, a community that we equip people to become better leaders or better servants of Jesus Christ. That this isn't a community that's sort of like is consumer oriented, but we're a community that wants to be the hands and feet of Jesus, that we want to grow people deeper in their walk with Jesus, and we're equipping them, we're helping them to serve, we're helping them to make significant impacts within our community. That it's not resting all on me, it's not resting all on the elders, because we know that will create a deficient church. But when the church is working and serving and equipping together, that is the church operating as it should. So this is, using our resources to help with the furtherance of God's kingdom, that our resources are entrusted to us to engage in the greater work of God within our community and with the greater community. I've said this many times. I am so thankful for the benevolence ministry that we have here at Village Green. I wish I could just pour out to all of you just the difference it's made in people's lives, and how it's allowed the elders to make significant help, to give significant help to people deeply in need. And I'm just so thankful for the generosity that this church has in that particular regard. So bless you for that. It's a church of engagement. I love that. Number 3 is this, and these next two might be a little difficult, but I want this to be a community that is safe. And this is really important. I don't want to be a community that judges people. I don't want to be a place, that doesn't speak the truth in love. Now, I'm not talking about, we don't speak the truth in love. That truth gets, laid aside just so we can, accommodate people, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't want to be a judgmental church first and foremost, but that we speak the truth in love. And that love often is, when we say about speaking the truth in love, okay, often we think about that in, as the passage, in speaking terms. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that, because to speak the truth in love is action-oriented. We don't often think of that passage as being action-oriented, but at the heart of what Paul is saying, and at the heart of truth, and at the heart of love, especially in the Bible, that these are action words. That truth is not just, you get on your, pedestal and you start telling people. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, but we want it to be a safe place. We want this community to be a safe place, a place where people can ask questions without shame or ridicule, that they can investigate the claims of Jesus Christ, and we're perfectly okay with having them do that, where doubts can be honestly expressed, and people can talk with one another, and there are people here that'll walk you through your doubts, walk you through your questions, that we're not. There's many people in this church that hold absolutely opposing doctrinal, positions, theological issues, and yet we get along. It's not like it's beautiful to say, hey, I don't necessarily agree with you, but we, live in faith to Jesus Christ, and together we can commune because of that commonality that we have, that we walk alongside people. A number of people over the Christmas holidays and prior to the Christmas season, we had many visitors, and we continue to have many visitors. And one of the statements that continues to come out from these visitors is that we're a safe place. And that blesses my heart amazingly, to think that people can come, feel safe, feel comfortable, and experience the love of Jesus Christ because of this community, and because they feel safe to do so. So let's continue that. And I happen to think community's always been important when it comes to Christianity. I happen to think that community is becoming more and more important post-COVID than it was even pre-COVID, that people are going to look for community that is absolutely safe and open-hearted is another really good term, and generous but truthful, but a loving community as well. Which leads me to the last thing, and again, I want to be, I hope I explain this really well. I want us to be a community that of vulnerability, a community that is vulnerable. And I'm using that particular word, even though it might make some of you uncomfortable, but I'm using that word as a replacement for the word authentic. Authentic has kind of gotten us, it's overused, it's a tired word. It has all kinds of different definitions attached to it. But I want to be clear that I want to be a place that is authentic in its vulnerability. We're naturally inviting, that we're an organic place, that we don't fabricate things just for the sense of, pulling emotions out of people and things like that. that we are a church that's honest about who we are, what we struggle with, honest about what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ, especially in the climate that we find ourselves in. Not everyone agrees. Not everyone needs to know that it's been difficult and hard for people. How do we reorient ourselves to the new normal, which whatever normal is. But I want us to be a place that's honest, that has integrity, that is vulnerable, that, we can pray for one another. And our walk with Jesus, each and every one of us, our walk with Jesus is very, very different. But let's be vulnerable. And, I don't want to be authentic just as a sense of duty or seeing people as projects. But I want this to be an honest, authentic, and vulnerable community. So people who come in will feel the safety, but feel like they're not an outsider because of whatever struggles they have. That we are real people worshiping Jesus, walking alongside him in the midst of our own, life circumstances and what is happening. So that's kind of like my 4 things. You can adopt those individually. I know vulnerability is a hard one because it forces you to kind of put yourself out there. But the fact of the matter, I think it's such an important element to add so that we're not fake, we're not seen as just putting a mask on every Sunday morning. So those are my hopes for you. I know they're hopes for my own life as I begin this new year and start 2023. But I hope that for the church and for you individually, that you will see this as the year of resistance. And when I talk about resistance, again, I'm talking about anything that pulls us away from becoming more like Jesus Christ. Thank you for being part of our service on this January 1st, 2023. I pray that you would make this a year of resistance. And thanks for being here. Just let me pray for you as we begin this new year. Father in heaven, thank you for this message. Thank you for this passage that's challenge to each and every one of us. It's challenge to the church as a whole. And Lord, as we enter into this year of resistance, help us to be mindful of those times where we get pulled away from becoming more like Jesus. Make us more aware individually and as a community. Open up our hearts to what you are doing in our lives. And Lord, make us a community that has these 4 expressions and does so for your honor and for your glory. And may your kingdom grow exponentially here at Village Green because of the faithfulness of your people, because, Lord, we know you're a faithful God. And as we begin this new year, Lord, we are praying for wisdom. We are praying for your hand of blessing. We're praying for an outpouring of your Holy Spirit, that we as a church, confident in the Word of God, will see lives transformed because of how your Spirit is drawing people to Jesus. So we thank you for this new year and pray it would be a blessing as we experience it together as a community. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks for being part of our service this morning. God bless.
God is able, he will never fail. He is Almighty God, greater than all we seek, greater Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure worshiping with you. Next week, we will be back in person and online, and so we will see you then. Have a wonderful start to your 2023. May God bless you and keep you.